All right, someone give me a heads up that you can see my slides. Great. Great, welcome everyone. We'll give folks about 30 more seconds to join and then we will get started with our session. All right. Well, good afternoon and good morning to everyone, and welcome to today's session, Perfecting the Pitch, Part 1, How to Craft a Successful Pitch. I'm really excited for today's session. This is a 3-part series, so Part 1 is today, to really help and support entrepreneurs coming out of the scientific and academic communities be able to understand how to translate their ideas and innovation into the marketplace. Today's event is co-sponsored by AfricaBio and the BioAfrica Convention and AHIA Emory, which is a program of Emory University based in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. AHIA's mission is to advance healthcare innovation and technologies in Africa through a bidirectional exchange or corridor between US-based resources and advisory and Africa-based early-stage life science innovators and strategic partners. We have the privilege today to actually hear from one of our co-founders, Professor Charlie Goetz, who's a professor of entrepreneurship at Emory University. As a reminder, again, this is a 3-part series, so today is Part 1. Our second part in the series will take place on June 26th, and we'll focus on defining your problem. So how do you articulate the problem you're trying to solve in the market, and how do you ensure that you've got the right product fit for solving that problem? And then Part 3 will be in July, on July 26th. I'll focus on creating your business strategy. So how do you put all of the business mechanisms in place around your innovation in order to make it successful? And again, as a reminder, the course is really focused on entrepreneurial scientists and innovators to expose you to basic business concepts and essentials that you need to craft the ideal pitch to bring your innovation to market. So with that, let's go ahead and hop into today's session. Today's session will be divided into 3 different parts. Part 1 will focus on a lecture and an introduction to how to craft a pitch and what are the basic elements that go into a pitch. It'll be about 30 minutes taught by Professor Charlie Goetz. Following that session, we will have about 15 minutes on an innovator case study with a scientist turned entrepreneur doing the hard work of entrepreneurship. So Dr. Cornelius Simakalu will be joining us, affectionately called Kano. He's the founder and chief science officer at AfricaBio. At the end of our 2 speakers, we will host a brief 10-minute Q&A. Just as way of housekeeping, in terms of the Q&A, feel free to drop in questions to the chat or the Q&A box throughout the course of the webinar. We will be saving questions until the end though. So again, feel free to communicate with us throughout the course and ask questions, and we will curate those for the end. Before I turn it over to Charlie, I will give brief introductions for both our fantastic speakers. And I've had the privilege of working with Charlie for now, Charlie, I think 3 years, both as a student of his. I've seen him as a mentor and a collaborator on AHIA events. And I actually had the privilege of sitting on a judging panel last year at the BioAfrica Convention to hear AfricaBio and Kano speak, and they won last year. So really excited to have both speakers today. So Professor Charlie Goetz is a professor of entrepreneurship from Goetz Business School at Emory University. Prior to his foray into academia, he had over 15 years of experience developing, implementing, and growing entrepreneurial ventures. He has been responsible for starting and building 9 new ventures to date and delivering returns to investors, in many cases far exceeding initial investment expectations. These companies operated in 6 unique industries, including banking, healthcare, sports, fast food, and radio broadcasting. Professor Goetz teaches entrepreneurship to MBA and business undergrads, and he has written 3 books. These are The Great Entrepreneurial Divide, The Winning Tactics of Successful Entrepreneurs and Why Everyone Else Fails, And so you want to start a business, 8 steps to take before making the leap. His third book is also his first novel, which is a political thriller titled Angels of Conspiracy. And again, as mentioned, Charlie is also a co-founder of the AHIA Emory program. Dr. Cornelius Kanu Simakalu is a dedicated intellectual and entrepreneur who is passionate about driving healthcare advancements in Africa. As the Chief Science Officer of AfricaBio, Kanu takes lead in pioneering development of cutting-edge AI-powered technologies aimed at enhancing vaccine accessibility and disease surveillance across the continent. He also serves as associate professor at the Val Institute of Technology, where he guides a team of researchers in the field of cell biology. His primary focus lies in evaluating differential gene expressions of colorectal cancers as he strives to identify potential therapeutic targets. With unwavering dedication, Kanu embodies the transformative potential of science and technology in Africa. Through his visionary leadership, he is actively shaping the future of healthcare on the continent, setting a promising path for the world. Quite the introductions there. And again, we're really privileged to have both of you guys on today's session. So with that, I will turn it over to Charlie to talk to us about how to craft a pitch.
Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, good. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about what we would call the perfecting the perfect pitch, investor pitch. Obviously, I'm going to have to go through some things a little quickly, and I apologize because of the time limitations. But I just wanted to give you an overview about some of the things you should be thinking about related to your slides and your investor presentation specifically. And then I'm going to spend a little time going through a previous investor presentation that I created a number of years ago. It's a different industry, but the concepts are the same, no matter what the industry. So let's get started with that. The goal of the investor pitch is oftentimes different than what most people think. Okay, so if I ask the average individual who's looking to do an investor pitch, what is their goal? They're going to say it's to raise money. And yes, that is right. That is the goal, but that's a secondary goal because that's not going to happen from one presentation. The reality is you're going to have maybe about 10 minutes to make your pitch, and nobody's going to write a check for a 10-minute presentation. Your goal really is to get a meeting with the people you were presenting to so that then you can get into the details, but you cannot do in a really good way in a 10-minute level of pitch. So the goal here is to get the meeting with the investors. Your investor pitch requires that obviously you get your potential investors very motivated. They're seeing lots and lots of presentations. That's very standard. You have to stand out, needless to say. But it's not an easy thing to do. What are you going to do to stand out so that they are interested in setting up a meeting? The average investor sees hundreds of different investor pitches over a period of a few months and only set up 3 or 4 actual meetings with potential companies. To get investors interested enough to set up a meeting, you will need to do the following. You're going to start with a really good story, and that story is really important because you have to make it relatable, okay? And it has to grab their attention, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We want to make sure you're answering all the questions that you think, if you were an investor, you would want the answers for. You want to show that your concept or your product is attractive to a sufficiently large market so that an investor can feel comfortable that they only have to capture a small part of it to make profits and to grow the business significantly. And you want to explain why competitors will be unable to copy what you're doing. Because if it looks like it can be copied easy, an investor is going to shy away from that kind of investment. But that's just the beginning. We want to understand how the investor thinks. So we want to get into the minds of the investor. What are they looking for in our investor pitch? Well, here are the items that are traditionally the most common elements that are in an investor pitch. The first one is you have to talk about the problem. What is the need or the want that you've identified? Why is it an important problem? And is it what we call a high priority problem? Is it really important to your prospects, okay, or to your customers or whoever that may be? What makes it important? The next is, how does your solution actually solve the problem? I do a lot of investing myself, and I've seen a lot of times a problem and a solution that don't really match very well. So you want to make sure that your solution really is addressing that problem. The next thing you want to talk about in your investor presentation is, how big is this market? And I'm not talking about if everyone bought, but who's likely to buy? And then what would that mean in revenue? If those people who are likely to buy your product at what you're expecting it to cost, how much would that generate in revenue? Important concept. In that, investors are going to always want to see a competitive analysis. And what a competitive analysis is, and here's an example, is something we call a competitive matrix. Why do we call that? Because it's a matrix. It has both, both vertical and horizontal. And on the horizontal would be you compared to the companies who are your major competitors. And then you would talk about specific attributes where you're strong and where you're weak compared to the competitors. And this example is for what we call accidental needle sticks. This is a product that I've created that helped reduce, this is a problem at hospitals and doctors' offices, and this helps reduce the accidental needle sticks dramatically. And this is just showing how our solution is better priced. And not only that, it's much safer, it's easier to use, and it's used correctly, much greater number, and it results in a significant reduction in accidental needle sticks. Okay. The next part of your investor presentation will be your competitive advantages. And this will include things like, do you have a patent or a patent pending? Who are some of your key customers if you're already at that phase? If you're not already at the phase of customers, we'll talk about that in a second on how you can get investors excited even before you have customers. It could be that you have great contracts. It could be you have unique marketing expertise or software that gives you a competitive advantage. But they're going to look for why you are different and how you can protect it. And this is all about protecting it against competitors. The next one is the business model. How does your business make money? Well, there are lots of different kinds of business models. The old business model is the traditional, where a company would buy a product for X, and then they would sell it to their customers for 2X. Today, due to the internet, we have lots of new different business models. An example of one would be Google. Google obviously makes money from selling advertising, but it couldn't sell advertising unless it gave away that free search. So it has to be the combined elements. Marketing and sales are an important element in the presentation, because we know the number one reason businesses fail is lack of sales. And if you understand how to get your prospects excited, your investors excited about your business, show them you really understand how you're going to market and sell your products to the market. The next is a summary of what are you expecting to do year 1, year 2, year 3, and if you need a couple more years, of course, you can do that. And it's just a summary so people can get a quick understanding about how much you're going to lose in the beginning and how much eventually you could make and the kind of growth potential that the business has. The next one is what we call the management of team. And this is important because you might have a great idea, but if the investors don't feel the team are the right people to deliver this successfully, they're not going to feel comfortable. So we're looking at, why'd you pick them? Next to last one is the credibility. And this is either a reference from a prospect. If you don't already have customers that you can get a reference from, getting a letter from a potential prospect when you explain the concept, saying that if you build that, we'll buy it on their letterhead, is very attractive to investors. So you might want to be thinking about, how do you get them excited so that they'll agree to write a letter. It's not a binding contract, but it's of value. And the last piece is the summary of the deal. How much money are you looking for? How are you going to use that money? And then what are you giving away in your business? What ownership will you be giving out in the trade for the money they're going to give you? As far as key tactics to increase your pitch success, we mentioned to start with that story. That story is critical. You want to show that you came up with this idea for a reason. There was something in your life or something that you knew of that needed to be solved, and it was important to you. And also, if it's not about the problem, maybe it's the solution that you have some unique understandings that got you into it. We want to provide only one concept per slide. Any more information on a slide makes it confusing. We want to sell the benefits of the slide, benefits of the product, not the features. We make errors by talking about features. Features are means by which we deliver benefits. We want to simplify the slide so it's really easy to understand. We want to use pictures, diagrams, graphs, videos, anytime to replace words, because nobody wants to read, and you don't want them to read. And pictures and diagrams and graphs give it much easier for them to understand. You want to explain why prospects will buy your solution versus the competitors. And you want to present passionately. The reality is, if you talk like you have no excitement about the product, they're not going to be excited about it either. Passion actually is a very good way to get your audience excited. And you want to show the references, as we mentioned, of that letter of interest. As far as keys to strong investor presentations, if the product or service is not very easy to understand because it's more complicated, try to show a quick demo. And we're going to show you some examples of this in a moment of your product or service. You want to use some really strong preemptive statements. And what I mean by that is it helps your audience, your investors, to focus specifically on what's unique about your business. It's something that grabs their attention. So here's an example. We are the first or only company that is doing this the way we're doing it, and explain why your customers really find that valuable. If you talk about your team, which you need to have obviously a part on your presentation about them, pictures are not what's important. I'm sure they're all very good looking people, but what we're looking for is 3 or so unique experiences or credentials for each of your key players so that they understand what they can do to help make this business work. As far as keywords on a slide to a minimum, you want to keep those words to a minimum. Again, diagrams, pictures, all are fine. We want to use them as much as possible, but those words need to be limited. We want to depending on the investor, they may give you between 8 or 20 minutes. You need to know that up front because your presentation will be different. So if you're going in thinking they're going to give you 20 minutes and they give you 8, all of a sudden the presentation isn't going to work very effectively. So always ask how much time you have up front. And as far as the number of slides, 10 to 12 slides is really all you need. Somebody once said, if you need more than 12 slides, you don't really, your idea of your business is not clear. So 10 to 12 slides is what we're aiming for to do those elements that we presented a moment ago. And with that, we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to go through an actual investor presentation that I created many years ago. And this is pre-internet. And I tell you this importantly because today you might say, well, it's easier on the internet. But in 1988, we didn't know the internet was going to ever come around. And it was a problem. So what I like to do on my investor presentations and what I teach my students to do is to start off with this little element here that kind of sums up why your investors or why your prospects would be interested in what you're doing. In this case, this was a product that was developed in a time when banks and savings and loans were having a problem getting loans. That's how financial institutions make money, through loans. And so what we're talking about here is we're going to put the profit back in banking. And if you're a bank, you like those words and you want to pay attention. If you're an investor, you like that you're helping that kind of problem. It's a big problem. Okay? So at the time, in the country, in the United States, which is where I'm talking about, prior to 1987, there was over 30,000 banks and credit unions in the United States. Okay? And there was a regulation that said, if you want a loan, the only places you are legally allowed to get them would be either a bank or a credit union. Because of that, all the bank had to do is open their doors and people would walk in. It made them very lazy, and it made it too easy for them because they had no competition. But in spite of that, they made lots and lots of money, and they were very happy. But the customers, the market itself, we learned, had a problem. And the problem they had is that a decent percentage of them were actually not applying for loans for one of two reasons. So when they needed money, they needed a loan, but they didn't apply to it. And the reason is their fear of the banks. What do I mean by that? Well, first off, the banks themselves were not very open when they could come and work. They were working. So the banks at that time were 9 to 4, and a lot of them were closed for lunch. So if you're working during the day, you don't have time to go into the bank. So therefore, you can't apply for the loan. And the other thing a lot of people were worried about is this walk of shame. Sorry, you're not getting the loan, and you had to walk out of the bank in shame. So those are the two things that were really holding back a lot of the applicants. Okay, and we found through market research that 34% of the market wasn't applying for loans, even though they could qualify. And that's who we ended up targeting. So let's talk about what happened. In the market, the regulation that I talked about earlier that said, guess what? Only banks and credit unions are allowed to give loans or mortgages. That changed in 1987. And new players. So what happened is loans are great business to be in. So a lot of really big players in the world decided we would love to give loans. So they basically lobbied Congress in the United States, and the Congress agreed it's better to have more people giving loans than less. And all of a sudden, you had these new entries, these big conglomerate companies, these big insurance companies, and these big brokerage houses. And these companies had real trained salespeople. The salespeople at the bank, they were somebody who said, here, you want a loan? Fill out the form. It wasn't a salesperson. All of a sudden, in that 1 year, the banks lost 35% of the loan. The reason I point that out, by the way, to everybody, is we want to show the pain. Pain is an important element. And if you're a bank and you've been around for 100 years and all of a sudden you lost a third of your business, you're in pain. That's a good opportunity for a entrepreneurial venture to solve. What did it mean? It impacted the banking industry itself with losses of 82 million loans per year, almost 800 billion in loan volume, and 92 billion in income went away. So they were concerned. Here's our solution that we came up with. We came up with something called simple, easy, convenient, and less imitative. All of a sudden, we're going to allow people to apply 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from the comfort of their own home. So you can actually see somebody with a beer in their hand applying. You want to take away the fear or intimidation of applying for a loan? You can do it at your own home. You get turned down, you take a drink of your beer. Not a problem. Okay? And there was no selling. It was a totally automated system that would take about 3.5 minutes to go through the process. The product, what the business was, is within a short period of time, we were able to show banks that in the least successful bank of all using our system was increasing their loan business by at least 25%. So what we did to explain the product is we did a demo, and we did a demo example, and we basically would take the CEO of the bank and we tell them, instead of us explaining how the product works, what we want to do is show you how it works. And we took the president of the CEO of the bank. We would basically give them the phone number to call. They would call, and our system would identify what bank it was, and we would ask them 5 questions. What is their social security number? What is their zip code? How much do they make? And they would push buttons on the phone. We would take that. We'd automatically pull the credit. We'd approve it, and we'd put the money in their bank all in 30 seconds. And that's what we patented. But we need to tell you this product has some problems. yes, our solution we think has a lot of opportunity, but it is not a good tool for attracting high income loan prospects. Now you may say, why am I showing you something negative about my company? In reality, showing something negative that is important because it makes everything else you look even more credible. The next thing is we wanted to show how does our product compare? Well, today, the bank to approve a loan was going to spend $102, and that's what the Federal Reserve in the United States told them the average was. With ours, even though I apologize, certain things are not coming up well, it's $32. So they're saving significantly. As far as implementation time, anything that required technology back then would take years. Our system, we would get up and running for them in 45 days, very quick, okay, versus the 2 years. And all they needed to have is a fax machine. That's all they needed. And then we would train their staff on how to use it. And we tell them it would be 2 hours for training, which they thought was great. But in reality, there was only 2 minutes to tell them how to take the fax off the paper off the fax. And then the other hour and 55 minutes we were spending with the pizza party. So it's very easy to implement. As far as the market size, there was 211 million loans applied for in the previous year and 31,800 financial institutions. The applicants that were interested doing through our research, we found that 31% said, yes, we would love to do it this way versus going into a bank. That would represent a potential market of 65 million loans. All that aside, we still projected in the fifth year of our business to only be doing 0.38% of the market, or 813,000 loans. As far as our competitive advantages, this is how we protect and why the investor would be excited. We had a patent. You could have a patent pending and that would excite them too. But we were lucky at this point to have a patent. And then we would show them, here are our clients. We had Chase Bank, which is the second largest bank in the world at the time. We had another one called First Chicago, which was the 15th largest bank in the United States, the largest credit union, and a couple of small banks. So we would show, we had proof of people actually using it. And then we would show them, in the worst case, they increased their loan business by 27%. And in the best case, by 66%, which meant they actually added loan business because of us. The competitive matrix I talked about earlier is when I'm showing you here again. In this case, I'm comparing our product, which is called Loan Connection, to the 2 other ways they could increase their sales. But I'm showing that, yes, they could purchase loans from other banks, but no banks really had extra loans. So that wasn't going to work. Or they could hire a really good sales force, but they've never managed a sales force. So there was an option, but neither of these were good. As far as how we made money, remember, we talk about the business model. In this case, we had 3 fees they paid. We had an upfront fee to customize their system. We had an average monthly fee to be using, just to be on the system. And every call that would come into our system, we'd be charging a transaction fee. And we'd show our margins, our gross margins on those, how much we were making on each one of them. Given that, in the 5th year of the business, we thought we'd add another 140 financial institutions, which would give us setup fees of about 3.7 million. We'd have monthly fees. At that point, we'd have 433 financial institutions on for another almost 7.8 million. And then our transaction fees would give us another 6.6 million for a total revenue in the 5th year of about $18 million. Here's our financial projections. You can see we're showing you year by year. We're summing up the number of customers or patients, or however you're going to be doing it. We show you the revenue in millions and hundreds of thousands and millions, if you will, and the expenses. And you can see we do lose money in the 1st and 2nd year, but we turn it around and make very nice profits by the 5th year. Remember, that's our projections. We have something called an internal rate of return. I'm not going to let you worry about that, but basically what that means is you'll just ask some business person to help on that one. But basically, what that means is the average return that the average investor is getting. And in this case, every year they're averaging 82.69% on their money. That's a really very healthy number. We're looking for 2.1 million, and we're going to use that 2.1 million from direct sales. We're going to hire more salespeople. We're going to spend more marketing dollars and other miscellaneous that will account for the total of the 2.1 million. To date, I had put in 1.5 million into the business, so they knew that we had a stake in the business. And we're hoping that if our numbers come out by the 5th year, that we could sell this business for 10 times our earnings, or about $102 million. As far as how we're going to market and sell, our marketing was going to be very simple. What we're going to do is our first clients were going to be big name institutions, and we got them as I showed you. We're going to use their references to give us credibility, because if big companies say they loved it and it worked unbelievably for them, medium and littler sized banks will jump on it. We're going to have articles that we're going to put out in the banking journals that every banker looks at every quarter. We'll have our articles about how it's doing. And then we're going to have a booth at the annual big conference where we can tell the story. As far as closing these leads that we generate, we're going to have our direct sales force. We're going to give a unique angle in the beginning that if you're the first bank in a new market, you're going to have what we call an exclusivity for the first 6 months. So you don't have to worry about a competitor. It gives you an advantage, which makes them more likely to want to buy now, and gave them that competitive advantage, which gives them urgency, which helps us sell quicker. We're going to reduce that risk by saying, very simple, a guarantee. If the loan connection doesn't increase your present loan volume by at least 10% just in the first 90 days, we'll give you all your money back, and we'll be happy to disconnect it, no questions asked. So they took away the risk, which was very important in selling. We showed that the average projected customer lifetime value from an average bank generated over 120,000 for us, the average client, and the average cost of getting a new client was about 2,000. So it was a good return for the investment. As far as our management team, well, we had 2 senior managers, myself and my junior partner. My background was at the biggest bank in the world at the time. I was a senior VP in charge of the credit card expansion throughout the Western Hemisphere. And I had already built 2 successful businesses to date. My partner was the head of a big bank, director of operations, and worked for one of the largest consulting firms in the world. Our summary is we're looking for $2.1 million, and we are offering 22% of the company's stock and 2 of the 5 board seats. So you're seeing now what are we looking for and what are we going to give them. If you're interested, we tell them that we're looking forward to set up a second and more detailed meeting, and this is the goal. The goal, remember, is the meeting, because we can't get checked until we get a good meeting with lots of detail. Okay, and we look to do that over the next couple of weeks, and we appreciate your time, and we do look forward to speaking to you again in the near future. And then we'd ask them if they have any questions. And if you thought about what I presented, we actually went down line by line to that early slide when I showed you what the investors are looking for, from the problem to the solution to the business models to the to the competitive advantages. They were all in there, but they were done in a story, if you will, a more story format, which made it easier for people to understand, of course, but also made it more relevant, and thought, yes, the company who's presenting it really does have a value. All right. With that, we have a wonderful speaker. Kano's going to tell you all about his business and what he's accomplished, what they've accomplished, and it's really impressive. With that, Kano, I'd like to provide you now with the opportunity to present. Did I leave? You don't need my slide up here.
Yeah, you should be good, Charlie. So Kano, if you want to take the floor and kind of talk about your own journey and translating from a scientist into innovator and what you've learned of applying some of the concepts Charlie talked about of a pitch.
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. Good morning to everybody. Different time zones, but it's not easy to follow an excellent presentation shared by Prof. Charlie, but here goes. So I make it a habit to share about my work with my family. So the other day, my small human, my daughter, asks me, "Hey, Dad, why did the chicken join the fight against animal disease outbreaks?" So we all look puzzled and I asked why. So she says, it's because it didn't want to be a scary cat. But anyway, she tells still jokes, although they're getting funnier by the day. But let me tell you a little bit about Iraka Biotech. So Iraka, we're developing groundbreaking technologies to combat the devastating impact of antimicrobial resistance, vaccine failure, and lack of access to veterinary vaccines. So, these problems contribute to animal disease outbreaks, causing poverty, tragic public health outcomes, and economic losses. And well, believe it or not, at the moment, over 60% of African countries are unable to produce their own veterinary vaccines, despite the increase in the population and farming of animal intensifying. So for this, we developed a novel inactivation platform technology we call PIT. So PIT is able to inactivate 100,000 times more antigen in comparison to existing technologies, and it eliminates the need to use harmful chemicals like formalin in significantly less time. So this technology enables vaccine production using microbial targets of regional importance with the potential to address a market worth $1.4 billion. So our goal is to enable access to life-saving vaccines and surveillance technologies that will help combat antimicrobial drug resistance. Now, when we look at this, in there's also the aspects of stopping or reducing vaccine failure and also reducing the rate at which zoonotic diseases are emerging. So in this instance, we've successfully inactivated quite a number of microbial targets, such as the bacteria, the viruses, as well as toxins. And we're currently evaluating the immunogenicity of these vaccines in target species and suitable animal models. So with our collaborations locally, as well as international other research institutes, we've been able to fast track R&D and prepare our systems, and prepare our system and 8 vaccine production protocols for the autogenous market by 2024. So if there is a philanthropist or angel investor looking to make a positive difference in the lives of millions of people and animals, consider joining Iraka Biotech. We promise that our work is no joke, and together we can revolutionize the African veterinary vaccine market and have everyone clacking with joy. So that's just about AfricaBio, but our journey doesn't start now. It's really started a while ago, and I'm proud to say that I'm a proud founder of AfricaBio, a company that I think has really defied numerous odds and embraced collaboration and driven innovation that is revolutionizing animal health industry on the continent. So our story really begins in 2017 when 3 passionate individuals with a shared vision or value or love for animal health came together. I, the biological scientist experienced in biotechnology for development, Mark Johnson, our mentor and seasoned business development officer with expertise in intellectual property management, and Blanche, a remarkable banker and life skills coach with exceptional leadership skills. So we all joined forces to establish AfricaBio. That was 2017. So our mission was crystal clear from the start. We wanted to create effective and affordable veterinary solutions that would always stay ahead of the curve. So we envisioned solutions that would enhance animal health and prevent diseases while also focusing on localizing the creation, enhancement, and equitable sharing of life sciences solutions with consumers worldwide. So our ultimate vision then, and it still is now, was to improve health by making premium One Health solutions reliably and conveniently accessible. So right from the beginning, our team worked tirelessly to develop groundbreaking solutions that set Iraka Biotech apart from the other competition, given the strategies that they used to make these vaccines. Then in 2020, we received a partial grant to develop PIT, the prototype. And well, this is a revolutionary product that would transform the way veterinarians and farmers prevent animal infections. So the following year, we received the prestigious Global Clean Tech Innovation Program Award that was done in South Africa. So we took the top award, and that kind of helped us solidify our position as a startup to look out for in the field of animal health and One Health. But our journey didn't stop there. In 2021, AfricaBio was awarded the 3rd prize at the Gauteng Accelerator Program, and that opened doors for us to be incubated at the Innovation Hub. We also successfully completed the phase 1 of the Africa Oxford Health Innovation Program, further establishing our reputation as a leading, emerging startup within that industry. Then in 2022, we were chosen to participate in the Brazil, Ireland, South Africa Exchange Program, expanding our reach and sharing our innovative solution with a global audience, which was really cool, because then we kind of got that exposure we really needed to see how things are done in those areas. Then countless hours, hard work, and unwavering dedication from the team paid off when we received our seed funding again in 2022 to further develop our solutions. We were also honored to take the top prize at the Bio Africa Startup Stadium. That was last year, gaining recognition and validation from our innovative approach to animal health. And why that was important for us is that at such events, all roads lead to that event. There were so many startups from across the continent and also outside Africa that were hosted there. And we had a chance to actually share our journey and share our solution, and yeah, it really felt nice. So our journey has been filled with triumphs, but it hasn't come without challenges. We faced setbacks, obstacles, and moments where we questioned our path. I remember in 2019, before we got the breakthrough in 2020, I was contemplating telling the team that, you know what, we've really waited for a long time, and there is nothing coming. And well, good enough we didn't have that conversation, because something great was really happening in the works that we're not aware of. However, it's through the perseverance and steadfast belief in our shared vision that we were able to also kind of overcome those hurdles. Then in 2023, we are expecting a response regarding a partial grant we applied for from the Technology Health, Human Resource Improvement Plan. And this will allow us to invest in the growth and development of our own incredible team. And this will demonstrate this investment, or this opportunity will demonstrate our commitment in nurturing and empowering our employees and recognizing that they are our greatest assets. And another highlight from the same year is that we stood at the top of the Pitch Select USA Award. That's this year. That was in March, a prestigious competition that celebrated our innovative solutions and entrepreneurial spirit. So again, we will be hosted by the Africa Oxford Health Innovation Program Phase 2 that will be taking place this August. So our journey is not far from over. As we stand here today, AfricaBio, we're driven by a renewed sense of purpose and passion to create lasting impact on animal health. And well, it's the journey. When one reflects back, we get to understand that entrepreneurship is not an easy path, but we want to inspire each and every one of you who are looking to embark on your own entrepreneurial journey. So for us, I think the key things was it's important to believe in your vision and embrace collaboration, and never be afraid to, go out there and innovate, and surround yourself with dedicated team that shares your passion and values. So persevering through challenges is important, because those will always be inevitable. And above all, it's important to remain committed to your mission, understanding that the impact you create can extend far beyond your initial aspirations. So if we have to look back at my own transitioning from where I was as a scientist, it's quite interesting, because you're trained to seek knowledge and understand the secrets of the universe, and that is for both the seen and the unseen. And in the pursuit for answers, scientists often find themselves deep into the rabbit hole of exploration, or as looking out for the next thing. You write about your observations, discoveries, and many more things along that tangent. However, if one is not careful, you can get trapped in that infinite loop of hypothesis testing, or seeking another experiment to disprove your hypothesis. So you know what they say? They say a scientist's life is full of experiment and hypothesis, like a never-ending cycle, and it's a bit like getting stuck in what programmers will call a loop. And the programs they call that the infinity loop. It may be cool for coding, but in science, they're just a hypothesis gone wild. So in Africa, going down the rabbit hole is not a luxury we can afford or I can afford, because the challenges are more plentiful. And as scientists, we've been taught to recognize, and we need to publish, present at conferences, serve in academic forums, such things. But consequently, many of us find ourselves hypothesizing and testing repeatedly in universities and research institutes. However, this repetitive cycle can make us forget the power of storytelling and its effectiveness in conveying ideas across time and space. So the African continent is brimming with brilliance, but often our brilliant scientists struggle to tell their own stories. Speaking of storytelling, did you hear about the scientist who tried to tell a chemistry joke at the conference? Well, that scientist confidently said, I have a great joke to tell about sodium, but nah, I don't know if you get it, the Na for sodium. Well, it's just to say that I think most of you had mixed reactions. You're like, what is he talking about? But yes, it's interesting to have stories shared. But in any case, I was one of those scientists until I found someone who was willing to take a chance on me, and that was my mentor, Mr. Mark Johnson. So he saw my potential and encouraged me to join the accelerator program run by the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program that was facilitated by the TIA and UNIDO. So I seized the opportunity and prepared a pitch deck about the ideas that I had. And initially, my pitch deck consisted of 25 slides. To my surprise, I faced a significant backlash during the presentation. I was, and well, it was a humbling experience, but it taught me a very valuable lesson. Over the next 6 months, I worked tirelessly to refine my pitch, reducing it to about 10 slides and focusing on essential information that would secure a follow-on meeting, like shared by Prof. Charlie. So this was the second lesson that I learned. The first pitch you make should always aim at securing a second meeting, and it should always truly be remarkable. Try to make, to have that effect with it. So crafting a special pitch that feels natural and resonates with the others takes practice. Essentially, you're putting on a show that represents the one real thing, and that's the idea that has the power to change the world. Of course, that's from your point of view, but you want to ignite that fire, or that fire in others, the people you're talking to. So fortunately, in that instance, you're both the witness and the storyteller. And depending on how you convey your story, you'll be able to capture the attention you seek, and much more. So to succeed in this endeavor, I think one needs to invest not only money, but most importantly, time. Invest time in reading, learning, and most importantly, practicing. I even practice my pitch at home with my family. That's why my daughter was coming up with all those, funny jokes. But my mentor, Mark Johnson, generously takes time to listen to me. And our CEO, Miss Blanche, who is not only a financial muscle, but also life coach in her own right, provides the invaluable support that is needed to go forward. So it's important to shift your mindset to see beyond the experiments themselves and consider how the outcomes are communicated. The results we achieve would enable us to imagine and dream about exciting solutions like the ones we're developing at AfricaBio. So take-home message in terms of tips for pitch. Start your pitch with, always have a compelling opening. Have something that is going to grab your audience's attention. Next, always tell a story. People love stories. We love stories. And that's the reason why we always, it never gets old. It's always new. So get your story together. Use visual aids effectively. Keep it concise and focused. And lastly, practice, practice, practice. It's very important to keep on practicing, because remember, you're putting on an act based on what you're passionate about. So the best way to sell it is practice. So remember that a captivating pitch deck not only conveys the information, but also evokes the emotions and leaves a lasting impression. But and by implementing some of these tips that I've shared, and also those shared by Professor Charlie's presentation, you can create a compelling and engaging pitch deck that captures your audience's attention and effectively communicates your message. That's it from me, and thank you.
Okay, Kenna, thank you so much. I feel like, it's always great to hear from someone who's in the trenches doing the work. And I think your practical advice is definitely well taken. I think even, you mentioned staying dedicated and focused on, your vision and persevering through the challenges. And these things take time. It takes time to figure out how do you boil down years of research as a scientist into a very fast 10-minute presentation that captures people's ideas and imagination and emotion. And that idea of storytelling is so, so crucial and kind of communicating your science into business. So thank you. I'll now kind of open it up for any questions from the audience. So please feel free to put any questions for Charlie on kind of structuring and crafting your pitch, for Keno on his experiences as an innovator. We'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A. As we give folks a second to drop any questions they may have into the chat, Charlie, just any reactions or maybe questions from you for Keno?
Well, I thought Keno's presentation was exceptional. I really did. And what's really good is showing what's actually happening now and how your investor presentation helped you to make that happen. You're a wonderful presenter. Really are. You had mentioned to obviously practice, and I think that is unbelievably valuable. Give an idea, if you will, to everybody, how many times you had to practice before you felt really good at it? Because I think it was surprising.
Well, to be honest, it doesn't. I don't think I'm good enough. I just keep on practicing, but when I get out there and share my my pitch and get the reactions, then I realize that okay, I'm better than I was yesterday. But I'm always competing with myself. How good am I, compared to how I was yesterday? So yeah, it's quite it's ongoing.
Good, and that's important because research shows, and this is going to sound unbelievably like a large number. But the research shows you got to practice it at least 50 times in front, in front of people, so that it sounds 50 times. I kind of got it down by 5, but the truth of the matter is you're always doing little changes to it. You're adding, you think, oh, that's I should put that into it too. And it really makes a big difference by doing that.
Yes, it does. We live in a very dynamic world.
In fact, when Steve Jobs did his big presentations, he would practice it 100 times before he actually did it. Very famous for that.
Definitely an art, to say the least. Well, Charlie, we do have a question from chat. So this is from, it's like an innovator still in the ideation stage. The question is, how do I answer this investor question? How much equity do I give? I'm still at the ideation stage, and even when I start making money, how do I quantify percentages?
This is not a science. This is an art, okay? But I'm going to give you some basic tools to think. When you're looking for money, you need to have some kind of financial projections. Now, I don't always believe that the investor is going to believe everything they see, but it's important that you have those, because then, assuming that you may get those numbers, then we can figure out what would my investment need to get. What kind of ownership would I need to have in order to get the kind of returns that I'm expecting? Just so you know, an investor, let's say a venture capital investor, would expect a minimum of 30 to 40% return per year on their investment on average. So that's what they're looking for. But now, if you in the early days, you might get what we call an angel, which is an individual who might have sold their businesses. I'm an angel who invest in businesses. They're not looking for as aggressive numbers as that. They're happy to get 15 or 20, but they want to be part of it. They really want to help. A lot of times they're retired, they've already done what they wanted to do, and they want to get back. And this is part of how they do that. But they want to return, don't misunderstand.
Thanks. All right, so this next question will be for both of y'all, but Kenna, let's start with you. How do you identify potential investors for your idea?
Well, That's an interesting that's an interesting and a good question, and I think it's quite relevant to us. So, just look at the field you're in. You've got depending on where you're staying or where you live or which region you live, there is always instruments that are public as well as private. Public instruments are really aimed at they've got goals like increasing creating jobs or enhancing ideas to be developed further. First, explore those because there's not an equity expectation in most cases. And for your seed ideas or just starting out your ideas, you can go to them. They'll be able to help you. And then once your ideas get structured, you've got something that you can actually show and leverage. Then you can begin to cross over to the private side. But with public sector, you just need to be patient, like we were. We need to be patient, and they take on much bigger risks than your private sector. But once it comes out and it's really good, then you can cross over to the public sector. So I would really look within your domain. So if you're into energy, just look at Department of Energy or Department of Science and Innovation, just to see what programs they run for your ideas. And are you at a TRL level 3, TRL level 1? Those are technology readiness levels. You need to have all that information. Approach them. They'll be able to set you up. And then once you start working, don't wait until you get your perfect product. You get your MVP. Once you have your MVP, then start engaging the private sector. Thanks.
Okay. Kenna, do you want to quickly define MVP for those that may not know?
MVP is your minimal viable product. So if you've got your sketch on a paper for a software pathway that is easily to understand, that can be your MVP. But in my area, I needed to have that system. I needed to have PIT. It's a pity I didn't show you what PIT looks like, but I needed to have PIT to say that I do have an MVP.
Awesome. And it looks like Charlie's back. As to say, he froze for a minute there.
Sorry about that.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. That's perfect timing. Kenna just wrapped up his answer. So we've got a couple more questions in the chat. So I'll keep going. Okay. Let's see here. Charlie, let's see if you want to take this one. So the question from Michelle for both speakers, we'll start Charlie, is for a biotech startup at the ideation stage, which one would you choose between a university ecosystem for incubation or a VC firm that's willing to support startups at the ideation phase? Is there kind of a good pathway for which way?
Usually, most VCs will not invest at the ideation phase. They want to see a little proof of concept. They want to see that you actually have created the product or the service and that it's actually being used by at least a few clients. They're usually more into giving you money to help grow the business. So a university is a great place. While you're at a university, it's also easier to get grants. And grants are non-dilutive, which is great, because if you can get some grants in the early days, just being in a university gives you a little bit more image to actually look like you should maybe be qualifying for a grant. Since it doesn't cost you anything and you can get money, it's a great way to start, especially if you're talking about a science-related product.
Kenna, anything to add to that, or?
I totally agree with what Charlie just mentioned. I think that's the way to go. And if you're starting at an ideation stage, you really want to guide your creation, and university space will actually give you that leeway to do that.
Awesome. This one's a probably fast one, but looking for any tips to structure an initial outreach email in order to get a first meeting or a first call. And Ken, I think you mentioned like your objective of a first meeting is to get a second meeting. So maybe if you want to start with kind of your take of any tips for how to structure an initial outreach, and once you respond, if Charlie has anything to layer on, we'll go from there.
It may sound weird, but you need to show that passion. You need to you need to believe in it, because you're creating it. So you need to share that is inside you with the other person. Let them see it the way you see it, and let them be the ones to to ask you. I always tell myself when I do a pitch, if I don't get a question back, or if I don't get questions, then I think it might have flopped. But I've been lucky that each time I pitch, I get like so many questions that inevitably there's a need for a follow-on meeting. So you're bringing your passion, and if you can tell a very good story, just like Prof. Charlie, using those steps, you tell a wonderful story, people will remember, and when they remember, they'll always, look out for you and try to engage you thereafter.
And Charlie is someone that receives a lot of outreach from innovators. What
Right.
kind of captures your attention from like either an email or presentation?
Yeah, now, I'm going to talk a little bit about more because I don't know as far as in Africa, but I would imagine it's the same way. There are a lot of times there'll be events where you can present to a lot of investors at one time. It's a good way to do a quick 7 or 8 minute presentation with, if you get them excited enough, they might be somebody who say, let's set up a next meeting. You might have to do better, a more in-depth presentation then. So that's a good way to do it. As far as just sending emails to individuals, you really have to have a really good subject line that grabs their attention, because one of the problems that mostly, especially the professional investors, the VCs and things like that, is they're getting lots and lots of solicitations. Usually you want to try to, if you can, use LinkedIn to find out who they're related to that you may know, because if you can get a referral into them, it is going to have a much greater probability of something happening, at least getting a meeting.
Yeah, it's a great response. Well, y'all, we are at time. To wrap up today's events, there's some more questions in the chat. I wish we did have more time. Thank you everyone for participating and engaging. Two quick things though. Number one, Charlie's point of events, definitely take a look at the BioAfrica Convention website. The convention this year will be hosted in the first week of September, and we'll have a startup stadium where you can apply in order to pitch your idea. Not only is it a great opportunity to practice and get your passion out there, but there is a prize at the end of it as well. And Keno certainly can attest to that, and how winning some of those initial competitions really can bolster your entrepreneurial journey. I'd also like to share just some quick contact information for folks that may want to jot information down. So again, AHIA is our organization that Charlie is a part of. We do trainings throughout the course of the year. And as a reminder, we've got 2 more parts of this series happening in June and July around continuing the conversation of how to perfect your pitch. So the next session, we focus on defining your problem and how your product fits that problem statement. Taylor, if you can drop in the chat the registration link for that, that would be fantastic. And feel free to reach out to us in the meantime. There's our website and our email address. If you want to get in touch with Keno and ask any questions or learn more about AfricaBio Tech, you'll see his information on the screen here. And then again, please make sure you follow along with the BioAfrica Convention for events and updates, especially as they make announcements about registration for the Startup Stadium. So with that, that is all I have for today. Keno and Charlie, thank you both so much for your amazing stories and just wealth of information. We really appreciate you guys participating. And thank you to everyone that joined.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, likewise. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.